I showed up at her door, 3 years later, ready to apologize. Her husband answered, holding their baby. She never looked happier. Hi, my name's Matt. I'm 32, and I guess this is the kind of story you don't really expect to write. Not until the past suddenly shows up in the most unexpected, irreversible way. 3 years ago, I let go of someone I loved. Her name was Emma, and if you've ever had one of those people in your life, the kind you only get once, you'll understand how heavy those words feel even now. I wasn't ready for her. That's the simplest way I can explain it. It's not that she asked for too much. In fact, she was the only one who never did ask for anything. She just loved me, fully, without games, without pressure. She made me feel seen in a way I hadn't been before. But at that time in my life, I mistook that kind of love for something I hadn't earned yet, as if I was supposed to climb a few more mountains, chase a few more dreams, before I could settle into something that calm, that real. I was 29, living what looked like a good life on the outside. Decent job in tech marketing, downtown apartment, weekend road trips with friends. A girlfriend everyone said I was lucky to have. But on the inside, I was restless. I felt like I was floating through someone else's version of success, watching the clock tick on a life I didn't even feel like I'd started yet. And that's when I made the worst decision of my life. We met in the most unremarkable way, in line at a coffee shop that no longer exists. She was in front of me, fumbling with her phone, trying to load her mobile rewards card, and I offered to pay for her drink just to move things along. She laughed, declined, and said something like, "Nice try, but I know that trick." I laughed too, not because it was funny, but because she caught me. I'd been trying to flirt, but in the most lazy, half-hearted way. The kind you do when you're used to surface-level connections and don't expect anything meaningful to come from them. But then, 5 minutes later, we were still standing outside the cafe, drinks in hand, just talking. Not small talk either. Somehow, we were already in the deep end. Books we loved, childhood memories, what scared us. It felt like stepping into a conversation that had started years ago and was just waiting for us to pick it up again. I never believed in love at first sight. Still don't. But I do believe in connection at first conversation. And Emma, she was different. She had this quiet strength about her, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything. She listened, really listened, in a way that made you feel like your words actually mattered. When I was with her, I felt like I could exhale, like I didn't have to keep performing. For the first year, things were good, really good. We traveled together. Nothing fancy, just weekend escapes. We cooked together. She introduced me to her friends who were warm and grounded and so unlike the people I'd usually surrounded myself with. For once, life didn't feel like a competition or a checklist. It felt real. But the problem wasn't Emma. It was me. I started pulling back, slowly. At first it was subtle. I'd take longer to text back. I'd cancel plans under the excuse of being slammed at work. I'd avoid deeper conversations by making jokes or changing the subject. She noticed. Of course she noticed. Emma wasn't naive. One night, she asked me, not with anger, not with accusation, just quiet honesty, "Are you still happy?" And I lied. I told her yes. Because the truth was more complicated. I loved her, but I also felt trapped by the version of myself I was becoming in that relationship. Not because of her, but because I wasn't ready to settle into something so stable, so whole. I think a part of me thought I'd always have time, that if I stepped away I could come back, that she'd still be there, waiting, because that's what people do in movies when love is real. But this wasn't a movie, and I wasn't the hero. A month after that conversation, I ended it. I told her I needed space to figure things out, as if I hadn't already made the biggest mistake the moment I decided she was someone I could leave. She cried, but not the loud, angry kind of cry. It was quiet, the kind that stays with you. She said she hoped I found what I was looking for. and then she walked away. The first few months after I left Emma were strangely quiet. At first, I convinced myself I'd done the right thing. I dove into work, doubled my hours, filled every blank space in my calendar with meetings, gym sessions, networking events, anything to keep my hands moving and my mind distracted. But the silence always came at night. Around 1 a.m., when the emails stopped and the world slowed down, that's when I'd feel it. This dull, persistent ache. Like I'd misplaced something vital, something just out of reach, and couldn't remember where I left it. I'd roll over in bed and instinctively reach for her, and every time I found nothing but cold sheets, the reality sank in all over again. I tried dating, not seriously, just enough to pretend I was fine. Tinder, Hinge, quick drinks after work. Some of the women were nice, smart, funny. But every single time I started to feel even a flicker of interest, my mind would flash back to her. The way she furrowed her brow when she read, the way she hummed when she cooked, the way she said my name when she was half asleep. It wasn't fair to them, and it wasn't fair to me either. So I stopped. About a year after the breakup, I ran into one of Emma's friends, Rachel, at a bookstore of all places. We did the awkward small talk dance, and I could tell she was holding back. Eventually, she said, "Emma's doing well." I nodded, tried to play it cool, and asked, "Still in the city?" She hesitated for just a second too long, then said, "Yeah, for now." I didn't ask anything else. I didn't want to look desperate. But that conversation sat with me for days. I started doing the dumbest thing, checking her old social media accounts even though I knew she was barely active. Every time I'd search her name, I'd hope to see some sign that she was thinking of me. Some quote, some photo, some post that I could twist into proof that I still meant something. But there was nothing. Eventually, I forced myself to stop. I had to. The obsession was eating me alive. Years passed. I moved to a new apartment, got promoted, went on with life. On paper, I was doing well, better than ever even. But there was this one drawer in my nightstand, bottom right, where I kept the small, silly things I couldn't throw away. A photo of us from a trip to Vermont, a ticket stub from our first movie date, a birthday card she gave me that simply said, "You make me feel safe." I never opened that drawer, but I never got rid of it either. Then came last month. I was on a run, not thinking about her for once, when I passed a couple sitting on a bench holding a baby. The woman was feeding the baby while the man made faces to make it laugh. I don't know why, but I stopped. Just froze on the sidewalk. It hit me like a wave. That could have been us. I went home, opened that drawer for the first time in 2 years, held that photo in my hands, and something in me just shifted. 3 years. That's how long it had been since I last saw her, since I stood in front of her and lied about being happy. I don't know what I was hoping for. Maybe some kind of closure, maybe a second chance, maybe just the chance to say sorry like I actually meant it. So I found the last address I had for her. An old envelope from when we lived together. I didn't even know if she still lived there, but I drove out anyway. 3 hours on the highway with nothing but my racing thoughts for company. When I pulled up to the house, I almost didn't get out of the car. My hands were shaking. I hadn't felt nervous like that since our first date. But I walked to the door, knocked, waited, and then the door opened. The man who opened the door wasn't someone I recognized. Tall, maybe a couple of years older than me, wore a plain white t-shirt, soft sweatpants, and had a baby carrier strapped to his chest. Inside was a tiny, sleeping infant, its face barely visible beneath a little beanie. He looked at me with that polite, curious look people give to strangers, like he was expecting a delivery or someone asking for directions. I tried to speak, but my mouth felt dry. My brain short-circuited. "Hi," I managed. I'm looking for Emma." His expression didn't change much, but something about the way he blinked, like he was processing a name he hadn't heard in a while, made me uneasy. Then he smiled. It wasn't a smug smile, it wasn't even defensive, it was just calm. "She's inside," he said. "Do you want me to get her?" I almost said yes. The words were right there. But before I could answer, I heard her voice from inside. "Who is it, babe?" "Babe?" The word slammed into me with more force than I expected, like hearing a favorite song re-recorded in a different voice. Familiar, but wrong. He turned his head back and said casually, "Just someone asking for you." Then he stepped aside slightly and called out, "Emma, you have a visitor?" And then she appeared. It took everything in me not to crumble right there. She looked, radiant. Not just physically, though she always had that understated natural beauty, but emotionally. She had this glow to her, this peacefulness I hadn't seen in years. Her hair was tied back, a soft robe wrapped around her like she'd just been nursing the baby or cleaning up. The moment her eyes met mine, I saw it, that split second of recognition. Her whole body stiffened, and then something shifted. I don't know what I expected. Maybe tears, maybe anger, maybe her to run into my arms or slam the door in my face. But instead, she did something that shattered me more than any dramatic outburst ever could. She smiled, a soft, almost bittersweet smile. "Hey," she said gently. "Hey," like I was someone she used to know. I just stood there, every word I'd practiced in my head on the drive down evaporating into thin air. "Hi," I said again, like an idiot. Then, silence. The baby stirred in the carrier, making soft little noises. The man gently rocked him, like this was all normal, like I was just another ghost from the past making an awkward visit. Emma stepped closer, not past the threshold, but near enough that I could see the fine lines near her eyes, the way her hand gently rested on the man's arm as she looked at the baby. She never said, "This is my husband." Never said, "We got married last year." She didn't have to. Everything about the way she stood beside him told me she had moved on, truly, fully, and for the first time in 3 years, I realized something with absolute clarity. I was too late. Whatever story I thought we still had left to write, she'd already written a new one where I wasn't a character anymore. I took a step back. My heart was pounding my throat tight. I wanted to say. Her smile didn't falter, but she nodded slowly. "Thank you," she said. "I hope you're doing okay." That was it. No begging, no bitterness, just genuine kindness. And maybe that's what hurt the most. That she could look at me, the man who broke her heart, and still wish me well, while I stood there unable to breathe. I nodded, turned around and walked away. I don't remember getting back to the car. It's like my body went on autopilot, down the driveway, across the quiet street, back into that tiny rental I'd driven 6 hours to get here in. I sat in the driver's seat, hands still on the steering wheel, staring at the house I once imagined would be ours. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside and left me running on fumes. I didn't cry, not at first. I just sat there, windows fogging slightly, the faint sound of laughter drifting through the slightly opened front door. Her laughter. 3 years ago, that sound was the center of my world. 3 years ago, I was the man she would run to with her news, her fears, her tired smiles after a long shift. I was her person, and I threw it away. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe an hour. At some point, the tears did come. Quiet, exhausted, bitter ones. Not the kind that demand comfort or drama, just the slow, painful leaking of regret. I kept thinking of that baby, of how she gently rested her hand on her husband's arm, how she smiled so calmly at me, how she looked genuinely happy, and I knew, not suspected, not guessed, I knew that if I had just chosen differently 3 years ago, if I'd stayed, if I'd fought, if I'd faced my fears instead of running from them, that could have been our baby. But instead, I let fear drive the car. I told myself I wasn't ready, that I needed space, that I didn't want to trap her in a life that didn't match the one I'd envisioned. And now, she was living a life I had no place in. eventually I turned the key. The car started. I pulled away from the curb and didn't look back. The drive home felt even longer, not because of traffic, but because now I was carrying something heavier, a truth, a finality. I didn't call anyone, didn't tell my friends what had happened. I didn't want sympathy, I didn't want advice. I just needed to sit with it. And over the next few days, I started writing. Not to her, I wasn't that selfish, but to myself, trying to untangle what happened, trying to trace the fault lines that led to the earthquake. I thought for so long that apologizing would bring closure, but standing on that porch, staring into the face of a woman who had clearly healed without me, I realized something deeper. Closure doesn't come from someone else's forgiveness. It comes from owning your choices, from sitting in the rubble and saying, yeah, I did this. And then learning how to build again. I wasn't there yet, but for the first time in years, I knew that I could be. It's been almost 8 months since that day, and still I think about her more often than I probably should. Not in a what if we got back together way. I know that chapter is closed, sealed, and buried, but in a quieter, more reflective way. I think about who she was when I loved her, who I was when I broke her heart, and who we both became in the years that followed. After I drove away that afternoon, something in me shifted, not in a dramatic, movie-like way. There was no sudden epiphany or thunderclap of realization, just a dull ache that didn't go away, and eventually pushed me to confront the parts of myself I'd been running from. I started therapy again, actually committed this time. No more skipping sessions, no more brushing off the hard questions. I sat through the discomfort, the guilt, the self-loathing. I unpacked it all. My fear of commitment, my pattern of pushing people away when they got too close, the wounds I never admitted I had. And it sucked. It really, really sucked. But slowly, something changed. I stopped trying to rewrite the past. Stopped daydreaming about alternate timelines where I stayed, where I held her hand instead of letting go. Instead, I started thinking about this version of me, the one who made mistakes, hurt someone he loved, and is now trying to become a better man because of it. I moved cities not long after that day, not to escape, but to start over properly. I left the place where every street corner reminded me of her, of us. Found a small but bright apartment in a quieter neighborhood. Started freelancing in graphic design again. Nothing big yet, but I'm rebuilding. I even adopted a dog. He's scrappy and loud and hates the mailman, but he sleeps at my feet when I work and wakes me up by licking my face at 6 a.m. He's the first real commitment I've made in years, and somehow it feels right. As for relationships, I'm not rushing. There's no dating app carousel, no flings to numb the loneliness, just space to feel, to reflect, to heal. I talk to people, sure, I've met a few interesting women, but for the first time in my life, I'm not chasing connection just to feel less alone. I'm learning how to be okay with myself, as I am, not as I wish I were. And about her, I don't check her social media, don't ask our mutual friends for updates. She looked happy, she was happy, that's enough for me. Sometimes life doesn't give you second chances. Sometimes the only gift you get is clarity and the ability to live better because of what you've lost. So here I am, 33, single, dog dad, part-time freelancer, full-time work in progress. Not who I thought I'd be at this point in life, but maybe, just maybe, exactly who I needed to become. Update. 1 year later. It's been a full year since I knocked on her door. 12 months since I stood frozen on that porch, watching a stranger hold the life I could have had. Since I realized, maybe for the first time in my life, what it really meant to let go. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. And somehow, a year later, I'm okay. More than okay, actually. I've built a life that feels mine. Not borrowed, not delayed, not defined by guilt or nostalgia. Just mine. Quiet, imperfect, but deeply real. The freelance work picked up. I landed a few steady clients, started leading creative direction on small projects. It's not glamorous, and I'm not making six figures, but I wake up and actually look forward to what I do. That's new for me. I moved again, this time into a place with a little balcony where I can drink my morning coffee and watch the world slowly wake up. I bought secondhand furniture, painted the walls myself, planted herbs that are mostly still alive. It's the first place I've ever lived that really feels like home. And yes, there's someone new in my life. It started simple. A shared table at a local bookstore cafe, an awkward laugh about our similar coffee orders, a conversation that lingered. We're not rushing. There's no pressure to define anything too fast. But there's honesty, there's laughter, there's presence. And for the first time, I'm not afraid of being seen. Flaws, scars, all of it. Therapy ? Still going, still learning, still growing. Some days are heavier than others, but I've learned to sit with the discomfort instead of trying to outrun it. That alone feels like a kind of progress. As for her, no, we haven't spoken. I haven't reached out. She hasn't either. I think about her sometimes, not with longing anymore, but with respect, gratitude even, for showing me what love could look like, and for helping me understand what I needed to heal in myself. She doesn't owe me anything, not even her forgiveness, but I hope she's still smiling, still laughing, still dancing around the kitchen with that same energy I once fell in love with. And if she ever reads this, somehow, someday, I hope she knows I'm okay. I really am, and I hope she is too.